We're here explaining the joke.
One of the first feelings we get in life. Horror. As we're thrust into an unknown world, naked and afraid. It's natural that most people connect with this emotion on such a deep level. When we're born, we cry because we're scared. And after that fear dissolves, we fall into a calm we wouldn't been able to feel had we not been under such stress moments prior. Granted, this is like saying that after smashing your hand with a hammer, you'll feel better once you're not doing that. But fear as an emotional response rewards us in a very different way. And it's easy to see how. Just imagine, you're a rabbit in the woods, and the wolf jumps out. You're filled with fear, and along with it, adrenaline. You run through the woods, and thankfully manage to escape. That fear vanishing from your body is increased tenfold by the feeling of survival. That you managed to push through this life-threatening situation and live to tell the tale. This is something that no other emotional response does quite the same. But no one's threatening your life in the movies. I mean, unless you forget to turn your phone off, in which case, you deserve it. But to regular people, this horror is purely fabricated. We all know that. It's part of the experience. We go in, pretend to be very afraid, and leave feeling reinvigorated. But this feeling of horror, how do jump scares fit into that? Like the wolf that shows up in the woods. You feel the jump scare, but as you're running away, there's no loud noise to scare you. You're just running. The jump scare is nothing more than the emotional response to incoming danger. But when no danger is presented, when you're given time to realize you're only looking at the screen, the fear vanishes. But what about the moment before the jump scare? That dreadful feeling as you hear the bramble snap, as you feel the wolf approach, that deep growl you can feel at the back of your neck, but can't quite see. Is that horror? One brilliant example of this is Skinnamarink, a movie about two children stuck in a house with no windows and a creepy spirit inside. To those who have seen the movie, love it or hate it, you can't disagree when I say that this movie is one of the best examples of setting up suspense in the genre. The movie itself can drag on several times, but each droning shot of a dimly lit hallway lets your mind wander. And this might depend on the person, but it's at these times that you might begin to see images in the grainy darkness, where the static appears to mumble out a few unintelligible words. Each shot left sitting there for an uncomfortable amount of time, the camera purposely tilted as if forgotten by the director. And in those open shots, you see in the corner those large open hallways, those doors left ajar, just enough so the darkness seeps into this already dark room. And you swear you see something moving, or about to move. And you brace yourself, because you've seen horror movies before. You know what's coming. But then, I'll let that be a surprise for those who haven't watched the movie yet, but I'll leave you and this section with this. I left Skinamarink in physical pain, as the suspense it generated crawled up my spine and held it so tightly I could barely feel my legs when I got up. Now let's look at FNaF. The clickbait king of 2014? Five Nights at Freddy's has been widely known by its convoluted stories and plethora of jump scares. But is there anything of value we can take from all its games? I think there is, actually. Because once you wipe away all the overreactor YouTubers and theories,
was that the bite of 87?
You'll find a game that actually does horror well. Real quick, for those who don't know, Haunted Pizzeria, where we have to look at 5-ish animatronic animals and make sure they don't kill you. Reach 6 AM, congratulations. Get caught by Big Bear, you get a boo. It's a pretty simple concept, but that's why it's effective. It doesn't pretend to be more than it is, until it does. It's clear what your goal is and what your punishment is. And that's where it thrives. You feel helpless, stuck in a little cubicle like an office worker. Anything but that. Only able to open and close doors while these death machines are trying to hunt you. But it doesn't stop there. because the suspense doesn't work if the only payoff is a jump scare. So the game keeps sprinkling in small dashes of a story, of freak happenings. Suddenly, the images on the wall become newspaper clippings. Suddenly, the spare animatronics are all looking at you. Suddenly, Bonnie is looking at you. Through the camera. Through the screen. The droning sound of the fan begins to be drowned out by garbled mouthings, like a mix of cogs pretending to be human. And then you see it. It's me. Your game closes. You don't get a game over. Your game closes by itself, removing all your agency as both the character in the game and as the person controlling them. That is an effective jump scare. But what about jump scares in other games and movies? What's wrong with them? One word. Consequences.
Consequences will never be the same.
In several games, a jump scare is only meant to give you a little fright as you're going from point A to point B. This trope has been so overused that the worst offenders have been called walking simulators, as the only kind of gameplay you're offered is walk over there, get jump scared, keep walking, jump scare. The same happens with the worst horror movies. Most, if not all, of the jump scares within those movies are straight up useless, because there are no consequences to the scare itself. No one dies, no one loses anything, our hero simply screams in horror as they run away scot-free. And we know they're going to be safe, because there are still 30 minutes left before the movie ends. So that's when the supporting cast comes to the rescue. And by that I mean they show up to die. And honestly, what fear does a movie evoke from blonde girl number 37's death? Especially when she's waving so many death flags around, she might as well be talking in semaphore. Hereditary does this perfectly, because the deaths in the movie have meaning. They're sudden, they're graphic, they leave an impact. You keep seeing those deaths in your mind over and over. The movie even gives you time to ponder over what's happened. And just as you begin to shake off that creeping feeling. You see, every jump scare in this movie is there to build upon the previous moment. For each big boo, there are a dozen blink and you'll miss it moments that are equally as frightening if you're paying attention. And that's one of the best things about horror. Jump scares, or the general fear you get when experiencing horror media, doesn't need to be a punishment. It obviously depends on the type of horror you're shooting for, but we watch these movies because we enjoy them, not because we're masochists. Okay, some of us are masochists. But speaking of masochism, some people might be wondering, isn't the physical and immediate act of a jump scare comparable to the tension of a scene or the body horror of a shot? And yeah, kinda. While they can be seen on opposite sides of a spectrum, the adrenaline you feel from a jump scare and the tension you feel from a tense scene are very similar in physiological terms. Both get your blood rushing, both prepare you for whatever is going to happen next, kicking off your fight or flight response. But while a tense scene can stand by itself, a jump scare needs its setup. It's like a punchline. It doesn't work without the proper setup. But unlike in comedy, this jump scare needs to stick with you. Because if it doesn't, then what are the consequences of that jump scare? You're hopefully never going to be in a haunted alien ship fighting for your life, or getting chased by a masked serial killer, or haunted by a demon. So, after the jump scare is over, you no longer connect that feeling to anything else. It fades away. But when the jump scare has the proper setup, the proper location, the proper relatability, you'll look over your shoulder whenever you hear a howl in the distance. You'll feel a creep up your spine whenever you see your laptop's camera go off, seemingly out of nowhere. You'll always freeze for a split second when you see someone you think you recognize in a video. It has to be them, right?
I have a present. I have a surprise. I will not
It's their face, their voice. It's them. Of course it's them. They're saying so themselves. In many ways, horror movies can act like a roller coaster. Each jump scare one more loop-de-loop that gives you an extra surge of adrenaline. But who wants that? Not roller coasters, those are awesome, but a horror movie that only exists to give you a spook for 2 hours before going away is just sad. You managed to amass thousands of dollars, hundreds of people, all that to make something that has as much lasting impact as a funny TikTok? Now, a couple people that haven't clicked off yet are probably saying, "You're talking about terror, not horror." And not really, shut up. But since you asked, terror is indeed a feeling of dread, that anticipation you get as you realize you left your car door unlocked. That feeling can either subside as you see your car safe, or turn into horror when you see your cars torn open and destroyed. But both cannot exist in a vacuum. You can't feel terror when you know there won't be any consequences, and in the same vein, horror without a meaningful introduction won't leave a lasting impact. These are intrinsically linked and cannot properly work without the other. This is the difference between bad horror and good horror. Good horror is something that sticks with you, like a curse you accept when you press play. And this curse is something that the creators must handle with care, with love. Because when you set off a jump scare, you breach the bounds of the screen, and the responsibility of that shouldn't be taken lightly. Because people will resent bad jump scares and just skip anything that might evoke that same feeling. I did that. Several of you might have done that just now. And that's a shame. Because this way, you might never know what it's like to escape that wolf. Boo. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and if you managed to hold on for the entire video, comment below your favorite horror movie. I'll see you next time, and don't turn off the lights.